There is a war going on. It's a spiritual war, a war between truth and deception. Only one thing cuts through all the lies and the opinions of man. It is the truth, the ancient book that we call the Bible. It is God's word. It is God's sword. We do know that Solomon took quite a journey away from God. He walked away. We don't have the record of his return. But his observations in Ecclesiastes, long been included in the canon of Scripture, and for good reason. They are profoundly true. There are certain artists that have demonstrated the kind of gifting and the kind of wordsmith talent that makes them so very quotable. And, of course, that's subject to opinion, but the hippie generation had a Jewish balladeer or poet, folk singer, named Bob Dylan. At least that's the stage name that the old philosopher went by. And a lot of times, the sad reality is people may be very gifted songwriters, maybe gifted musicians, but their gift ends up sort of being diminished by lifestyle. You can only party so much, and you start getting dumber, and you start really losing the ability to make sense. That didn't really happen to Bob Dylan, though I think he did live hard. There was one particular phase in the 80s when Bob Dylan had come to believe in the Jewish Messiah, Jesus Christ. He came to believe in Christ. During that time, he produced at least the one album that I kind of wore out, was called Slow Train Coming, and it was really more about the ultimate second coming of Messiah. And it was profound. And after that season, I don't know what happened with him. I don't know what happened with Bob Dylan, but I can tell you that today there's no indication of any faith in Jesus Christ. And it seems that he kind of fell back into the world. But it doesn't make anything that he said during that time any less true. It's quite profound. It's still very quotable. That songs like "You Gotta Serve Somebody," that's a really profound song. And I've heard it done by other better singers. Dylan was never a great singer. I've heard it done in a blues style, and it's stirring. But the basic thesis of the song is it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. Everyone does. And I find Dylan at that time, so quotable. And there's still other times where Dylan is quotable, even if he's not right today, even if he didn't continue with the Lord. I kind of see Solomon that way. Solomon has this insight. Solomon has this amazing ability that's from God. He prayed for wisdom, and God gave him wisdom. And he has taken that wisdom on a journey, on this journey to find meaning outside of a right relationship with God. Now, he fails at this a lot, and you'll see that as we read tonight. He tries to talk about life under the sun, as if John Lennon's Imagine could be lived by. Imagine there's no heaven or no hell beneath us. Imagine. And, then live like, you actually believe that, or you actually think that's the case. Solomon continues to slip back into mentioning God and eternity. He fails at holding to the notion that there's only what's under the sun. There's only life on earth. There's only this life. And he has the means because of his wealth and because of all that he inherited, and the wisdom, the intellect that he has. He has the means as a king to pursue everything further than the average guy can. And so he gets there, right past all the illusions that if I just had a little more of that, I only didn't find meaning because I didn't have enough of it. Well, he goes beyond all of that. I'm still reading from the English Standard Version as we go through Ecclesiastes. Beginning in verse 1. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad. I said of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven, during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted them in all kinds of fruit trees. Now, when you hear that, I want you to understand that Solomon has the means and the riches to go beyond your backyard garden. Understand this. When he said, I made gardens and parks, he did things that were truly a wonder at the time. That would require aqueducts, that would require the study, the really diving into the study of botany and plant husbandry. He says here, and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than anyone who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and provinces. So that would be taxes from the people and tribute from all the nations that his father had subjugated. He said, I had all of that. And I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure. For my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. And I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind. And there was nothing to be gained under the sun. This particular section, verses 1 through 11, is pursuit. Let's consider it. He said, I'm just going to try pleasure. Come on, heart. Let's try this one out. Come now. I'll test you with pleasure. And few things will test us like pleasure. Pain doesn't test us as much as pleasure does. And he said, let's do this. Enjoy yourself. He says this a number of times here. Enjoy yourself. He said, I make gardens for myself. You'll see that. Living as he was, as if there was no God, as if there were no eternity where you actually find reward or consequences. He started out with, let's do pleasure. And he identifies two things, two nouns he uses, laughter and mirth. And when I get all done of laughter, he said, laughter is just mad. It's madness. And mirth, what use is it? So I searched my heart how to cheer my body with wine. So he pursued that, artificially stimulating the pleasure center of the brain. He chose as his substance wine. And he said, the weird thing about it, and I really do, I think he marvels when he does this. He said, and my heart still guiding me with wisdom. So to take what he had been given by God, great intellect, great wisdom, and then apply it to the pursuit of pleasure, and then apply it to just wine, and that would stay intact. And I think that's one of the reasons why, honestly, he could find no real meaning and no real fulfillment, that he couldn't be satisfied because of that wisdom. As a matter of fact, I have known, perhaps you have too, dumber people who don't have a problem at all, don't have any real anxiety about what's the purpose, what's the meaning of it all. They just reach for another drink. And they can do that for a long time. I mean, really sustain that. I have marveled at some whom I know and I love, or I'm just acquainted with, at how long they continue on the foolish test that Solomon gave himself to here. I don't think Solomon went as long. Pleasure, just go for pleasure. Just laughter and mirth, wine. But his intellect, remaining intact, it was still with him, still guiding him. I think it kept him from really thinking this is good enough. I'm saying there are many people that I'm acquainted with that think, no, that's good enough. This is good. Get the money. The wine never runs out. It's reality that not everybody who does this, that Solomon did, and even people that don't have the means to pursue it as far as he did, it's a reality that there's a lot of people that find it's just fine. They don't think deep thoughts. Perhaps you know them. Solomon wasn't that guy. It's kind of like he is too smart to stay on this path. He's been given too much wisdom to really be able to enjoy like probably everybody else was, right? Maybe some of you have likewise. Especially if you're a prodigal, especially if you're somebody that had been prayed over and taught the truth and had the seed of God's word sown in your heart. That'll ruin you. You can go off and do the same as Solomon did, but you'll conclude as Solomon did. It's a waste of time. Absolute waste of time. My heart's still guiding me with wisdom. That third verse, how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what good it was for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. Verse 4, he said, I made great works, built houses, planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens. Big achievements for Solomon. No, don't mistake the use of self there to suggest that he did the labor, because you know he hired that out. He contracted that. Solomon's, he's too smart to be just giving himself to the labor, but he pursued it. He's kind of like the big master contractor pulling everybody else together and all of these resources to build the aqueducts and the vineyards. Achievements, right? And some people think, well, if I just could have some achievements, if I could actually stand back and look at something and say, I accomplished that. Well, Solomon did. He did that. Still, meaningless. He refers to the aqueducts, the pools, in verse 6. The 7th verse is interesting, and I think the King James Version says, I got me servants and maidens and had servants born in my house. I also had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem. So possessions, even human possessions, I owned them all. It's the 8th verse. I gathered me also silver and gold, the peculiar treasure of kings of the provinces. It is the second half of that verse. I got me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So you'll notice the reference to musical instruments in the King James Version clashes with the newer translations, like the English Standard Versions, where he said, I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines. So rather than music, it's an interesting Hebrew word that is only used here. It's not used anywhere else in the whole Old Testament. There's one Hebrew word that you can translate to musical instruments, or you can translate it to concubines. That it's neither one of them are necessarily right. It's sort of a unique circumstance. But let's just take it to mean musical instruments, that men and women singers, that he had the best, that he was able to pursue the arts, that he was able to pursue really, really good music. And by the way, that's what money will get you, is really good music. And I sometimes marvel. I do listen to and watch a limited amount of secular music, and nothing that is offensive or wicked, or the kind of music or the kind of message that would make me so angry and grieve me that I couldn't be entertained by it. I can be entertained by somebody telling a story. I can be truly entertained and stirred by somebody with a message, a passion about something. And I do often marvel, I really do marvel at how good so many lost artists are. And when you have the means that the really wealthy artist has, the means to hire the best backup singers, you got the best guitar player, not just somebody you just got to put up with, and you guys got a band together and you're trying to just get better as you go. But they pull together these people that are truly amazing from a gigantic pool in Nashville or Los Angeles or somewhere, that you've got this vast pool of incredible talent. Put them all together with the right production. Sometimes I'm in awe of the production, that how well produced a song may be, or how well produced a concert is. Solomon has the means to collect. So if we take the second half of verse 8 to just indicate his pursuit into the arts, and particularly music. And few things are, to me, as pleasurable or as stirring to the soul as music. If you're like me, you have music on all the time while you're working. Maybe you drive other people crazy because you got music on, people have to shout over it. I am often that guy. Or, if we take it to mean that he actually pursued concubines, the delight of the sons of men, as we have it in the English Standard Version, that Solomon went to the hedonistic pursuit of beautiful women. And let's just collect them all like they're action figures. Few things are as sort of exploitive objectification as a man with the means collecting them. But Solomon indicates that he did. The 9th verse, again, I became great and surpassed all who were in Jerusalem before me. So he took this further than anybody. All of these things. He said in verse 10, whatever my eyes desired, I kept nothing from them. He never denied himself anything. And he is somebody then who testifies to us that that's not the route to real happiness and real meaning. My earthly dad did similarly, testified to me, not knowing that this was 6 months before he would die at the ripe old age of 34. He didn't know that when he just was overcome with the need to try to get something across to me. And he was a redneck hedonist who never denied himself anything, never denied himself an opportunity. If he could steal a woman from somebody, he would do it. Didn't matter if it was family. It didn't matter if it was friend. He was wicked that way. He denied himself nothing. He lived for himself, but he testified to me. Now, again, I say, not knowing that his life was almost over, testified to me that as a 33-year-old at that time, that it did not produce happiness. It did not. And he urged me not to make that mistake. And he wasn't eloquent about this. He didn't know how to communicate anything on that level. Honestly, my dad honestly never said anything to me of meaning in my entire life. It was just really basic. And even almost like baby talk when I was a kid, not wanting that. Like, hey, tiger. Even then I was like, you got anything else for me? In my heart, you know. And it was that one time that he actually did. And I'll never forget what he said, but it was the testimony here. He didn't have Solomon's resources, but he had come to the same conclusion. You want a recipe for misery? Do whatever you want. He taught me that. You want a recipe for misery? Just deny yourself nothing. Do whatever you want. And soon you'll be a slave to your want. Your want will own you. So, whatever my eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor. This is my portion, all my labor, all my reward. There's a guy testifying to you. And he said in verse 11, again, from the English Standard Version, and then I considered all that my hands had done, the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, it was all vanity, a striving after wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. What a conclusion. So he goes through this whole season. He does all of this. It's all there to be seen. His vast collection of beautiful women, his collection of artists and music and art that's produced, his gardens, his botanical pursuits, his aqueducts and pools and all of this. Instead of basking in it and going, am I awesome or what? He goes, what is the point? Pointless. Vanity, vexation of spirit. No profit. So in verse 12, so I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. That he continues to put those three together through this. I turned to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. Wisdom, madness, and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? So he starts thinking about his successor, which he knows would most likely be his son, unless he's assassinated, right? That as king, he's got a dynasty going on. He inherited the kingdom from his father, and he would pass it on to his son. That son, Rehoboam, would prove to be the dumbest of all kings. That's a heartbreaking reality. That of all kings, it's a wonder that he actually marvels on this. Adam Clark commented on that. Alas, Solomon, the wisest of all men, made the worst use of his wisdom, had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and left but one son behind him to possess his estates and his throne, and that was one of the silliest of fools. Now we got to cut Rehoboam a little bit of slack, because his foolishness, Solomon's son's stupidity, was very much God struck him stupid. It was the Lord who did that to bring judgment, ultimately, because of Solomon's sins, because of the idolatry that Solomon had led the nation into. So of course, you guys remember, right? In 2 Kings, you remember that Rehoboam becomes the king, and there's instantly an uprising. There is discontentment in the nation. And there's two sides to it. There's one side, that just comes, the whole issue was, your father has taxed us to death. The burden was huge, and we can't take it anymore. For all of his big projects and all of his great expansion. I mean, it's really awesome and all, but you know what? It costs some money, and we're the ones that are having to pay this. Give us a break, and you'll be our king. You guys remember this, right? And silly Rehoboam He has two sides to consult. He consults the old man who had once advised his father, and they said, if you will give these people a break, they will love you, they'll follow you. Your father did burden them. Be kind to them. Speak kindly to them. He listened to that. I don't know. What do you guys think? And he goes to the young man, his peers. And those idiots told him, you can tell them. You go out there and tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. You think he was bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. Does that sound smart to a people? Does that sound smart to a people that have already had enough? You go out there and talk. I mean, what he does, he listens. He goes, I like it. I like it. That's good advice. Thanks, fellas. And the kingdom was split in half. But it is written that it was of the Lord, that it was the Lord doing it. So some of Rehoboam's stupid would seem to be the judgment of God on the house of Solomon. But still, what a sad reality. So he does this. Back to our passage. He talks about who's going to come after me. So I turn again, verse 12, to consider wisdom and madness and folly, for what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. And then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. A wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet, I perceived that the same event happens to all of them. Now, you know what he's talking about? He's talking about mortality. He's talking about death. Whether you're wise or foolish, you're still going to die. It's like, man, the same event happens to everybody. Verse 15. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? What have I got to show for all that, right? I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool, there's no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and a striving after wind. And again, his conclusion. Living this way, living like there's no eternity, living like I'm not going to be eternally rewarded or eternally punished. He said, man, everything was meaningless. Everything was pointless. Everything. Striving after wind. Can you catch the wind? Can you hold the wind? And you can't, and so also you cannot find true meaning in your existence just in our very brief time on earth. There has to be something more. By the way, it was C.S. Lewis who, in Mere Christianity, said, this is a near quote, if I find in my heart a longing that cannot be satisfied by anything in this world, that I must conclude that I was made for another world. Verse 18, I hated all my toil, in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he'll be wise or a fool? Well, we know on the other side of him living his life, but nobody knows the future, and he couldn't know back then. And the thought of it was really bugging Solomon. And who knows whether he'll be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. Now he goes beyond it just being meaningless and says it's a great evil. It's not just meaningless, it's wicked. It's a great evil. Verse 22, what is a man from all the toil of striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. He's saying that. There'd be nothing better except he can't do it. And he's like, man, it's a great ideal. It would be a wonderful thing if you could just eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. And there he goes, slipping right back into acknowledging that there is something beyond the sun. There is a heaven, there is God and his throne. This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? We can't eat if it weren't for a creator creating food or creating us with the capacity to eat. So he keeps slipping back into it, the acknowledgement of God. Verse 26, for to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. Do you know what Solomon is saying here? Solomon is actually saying something that his father said repeatedly in Psalm 37. He knows Psalm 37. He knows that his father David wrote that the meek will inherit the earth, and it's repeated in Psalm 37. It's just continually repeated. The meek will inherit the earth. All right, here's something for you to consider. Again, quoting the quotable C.S. Lewis. He observed that the person who makes earth, this world, his obsession, the person who wants this world doesn't get this world or heaven either. But the person who actually seeks God and makes heaven their goal gets heaven and gets the earth thrown in. So everything that has been, everything that exists, ultimately in the end is taken from the wicked and given to the righteous. Solomon knows that, and he keeps falling back to that knowledge. That adds to the vanity. Chapter 3, verse 1. Let's begin with a very poetic first 8 verses, 1 through 8. You hear Solomon marveling when he says this. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. Let me mention, by the way, that that is accurately translated. There's never a time to murder, a time to kill. Killing, there's a distinction between killing and murder. There's a time to kill. Every soldier knows this. Every law enforcer knows this. There's a time to kill, and there's a time to heal. A time to break down, a time to build up. That's an irony, isn't it? There's a time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. How about that one? More about that later. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. So his opening line that there is a time for everything. Even these things that are so completely opposite to one another. There's a time for each of them. Everything is vanity. There's a quote from G. Campbell Morgan. I think Morgan is one of the smartest men that ever wrote books. But he wrote, everything is vanity. To live under the sun is to decide at last that the natural thing to do is to take what comes. Materialism necessarily becomes fatalism. Materialism necessarily becomes fatalism. Here, G. Campbell Morgan, on this particular section, this very and often quoted section of verses 1 through 8, Morgan writes, Solomon's ceaseless reiteration of the words, a time, a time, a time, are intended to indicate his sense of the monotony of all things, rather than the variety of all things. Kidner says, the repetition of a time at a time, it begins to be oppressive. Whatever may be our skill and initiative, our real masters seem to be these inexorable seasons. Not only those of the calendar, but what tide of events which moves us now to one kind of action which seems fitting, now to another which puts all into reverse. It's a great observation. So there's a time to everything. For every purpose under heaven. Birth time and death time. Planting time, plucking up what's planted. Time to kill and a time to heal. There's a time to break down, there's a time to build up. Time to weep, time to laugh, to mourn, to dance. Cast away stones. By the way, you would cast away stones. You wonder, when did anybody cast away stones? If you conquered your enemy, you would demolish everything that they built. They built of stones, and you would scatter them. And you would scatter them back over the field that they came from. They collected them out of the field so they could farm the field they built with them. And in that world, you would scatter. Make the field again unusable, and destroy the houses of the town. There's a time to cast stones away. There's a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, or to be far from embracing. When would that be? Well, listen, if you're a soldier and you've got to leave everyone you would embrace, there's a time to go away and carry nothing but a picture, as many have done, all through the ages of humanity. There's a time also when you are single to consider refraining from embracing. You shouldn't be out just embracing everybody, doing a little test drive physical affection. I do all I can to discourage that among the single, certainly among the married. But, there's a lot of, the world that you and I live in, the culture that we're a part of, they really think you're supposed to go out and test drive each other. Humans are not designed by God to be test driven. To be acquainted with somebody, to know what's in their heart, to talk to them, is to exchange thoughts. You do that without making out. Moving right along. Time to get, a time to lose, and that's reality. Time to keep, a time to cast away, time to tear, a time to sow. There is a time to keep silent. Man, that's something. A lot of Christians don't know that. It's weird. There's one extreme or the other. There's some that are always saying too much. There are other Christians who are never saying enough. They're, being cowardly. But there's a time, remember what Solomon wrote back in Proverbs about the fool uttereth all his heart? The fool has no stopper, no filter, just vomits out his thoughts constantly. His brains fall out through his mouth frequently. There's a time to be quiet, and it's encouraged. In fact, even a fool is considered wise. Solomon said, even a fool is counted wise when he just stays quiet. There's a time. You don't always have to say everything that you know or think you know. But then there's also a time to speak, a time to not be silent. There's a time to love, and how about this one? Verse 8 says, there is a time to hate. If you love, you will hate. Anything that threatens what you love. Everyone does. Modern culture is like, love good, hate bad. Love good. All love is not good. All hate is not bad. There's a time of war and there's a time of peace. All of that in the first 8 verses. Well, consider. Carrying on from there, Solomon, after that beautiful poetry, that marveling, says in verse 9, what gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. There is Solomon, even in his chronicle, where he is trying to, let's just imagine that there's only life under the sun. He can't maintain that. He can't. And he slips right back into that observation that God has actually given this business to the children of man, that we live in a realm where you got to work. One way or the other, you got to work. We have to give ourselves to some kind of a toil. You're aware there are people who work really, really, really hard at not working at all, right? They're still working. There are people that work really hard in order to not work. There's no getting around it. You got to work. There's a toil. And Solomon says this is business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He made everything beautiful in his time, but it's his next sentence in verse 11 that is most profound. Not only has he, God, made everything beautiful in its time, also he has put eternity into man's heart, so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. He has put eternity in man's heart. God has put eternity into our hearts. We have to acknowledge that truly there are things written on our heart that are inescapable. Eternity is one of them. I know for a fact that my dog Rex doesn't even think about eternity at all. I know what he thinks about. I can tell. It's only one thing. Right now, this season of his young dog life, when are we going outside? When are we going outside? Are you going? You're putting your boots on. Are we going out? Can I go? Because if I go out there, I can chase a stick. That's not, honestly, he's not sitting around going, why am I alive? Why? What's the meaning of it all? You can imagine, throwing a stick and the dog going, what's the point of it? With all of the suffering in the world and evil that work in the universe, no, there is something in human hearts that make it impossible for us to truly live like an animal, just do what we feel, what we want, without experiencing the vanity and meaninglessness of it all. St. Augustine said, quote, "You, God, have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they can find peace in you." So, eternity in our hearts. It has long been quoted by missionaries. It's been the kind of thing that missionaries have marveled on for centuries. That no matter where you go, as far away from the origin of Scripture as you want to travel to the most remote places, you find there humanity still attempting to worship, still attempting to try to understand who God is or know or please Him, as if it's embedded, it's innate knowledge that we're made for that, even if it's misdirected. He's made everything beautiful in His time. He put eternity into man's heart. Verse 12, I perceive there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people fear before Him. That which is already has been. That which is to be already has been. And God seeks what has been driven away. He will later say that there's nothing new under the sun. What has been, what is. This arrangement is old. It's been like this. Verse 16, moreover, I saw under the sun, back to that, under the sun, that whole arrangement as if there was no God, as if there was no heaven and no throne above. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. So he cannot sustain this under the sun thing. He sees injustice and finds himself going right back to God's going to deal with that. I said in my heart, in verse 18, regard to the children of man, that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. Verse 19, what happens to the children of man? And what happens to the beast is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beast for all his vanity. All right, so if you quote that and make that part of your doctrine, you're a bonehead. That was Solomon's, again, attempting to look like there's no God, attempting to think it through, like, man, humans and animals, they both die. Look at this. He says man has no advantage over the beast. He's wrong in a sense, but he's also right in a sense. If we live like an animal, we don't have an advantage. We're going to continue to exist, whether it's in heaven or hell. In that sense, the animal has the advantage over lost man. But the saved man has every advantage over the animal. Why? Because the animal dies. All right, deal with this, you guys. And then, here you go. Ready? They cease to exist. They don't go to heaven. Your dog's not in heaven, deal with it. Your dog is not in hell either, so don't feel too bad. Your dog that you loved, your animal buddy, and I've had many, they've come and gone. They exist in my memory. They exist as something that happened in history. And that is a beautiful, it's a cool thing, but they don't die and then stand before God and be judged. They don't. They don't have a spirit. They have a soul. They feel and they think. You know that, right, guys? People really thought, scientific, I love this word, the scientific community. I love that word. No, I don't. I'm mocking. I hate the word community. The overuse of the word community. here in the LGBTQ community, in the medical community, here in everybody's got a community. The whole world's all. Anyway, the scientific community celebrated a couple decades ago when one animal trainer researcher was successful in teaching one female gorilla, Coco, sign language. And they celebrated like we've just helped these creatures take their next step in their evolution. Well, A, there's no evolution. And B, if there was, whatever Coco got for lessons is dying with Coco. The species didn't change. And what did they really do? They taught her some tricks, and I've done some reading on this. Coco's communication is pretty limited. Her longest sentence in their entire experience with her, up until the time of what I read, was, "Me, orange now, get me orange now, me want orange now." I'm thinking, my dog does that. My dog communicates. I mean, all right, he doesn't have fingers, and he can't do signs, but he's got a tail. And his tail, he's always telling me, yes, I like the fat dogs that shake their whole butt whenever they have big fat yellow lab. Look like they put a grass skirt on them and they can do hula. There's so much emotion. But dogs have gorillas have always used sign language. What is that? That's like, it's my neighborhood, man. The gorilla has always like, oh, you want some? Sign language, what do you think? Whoosh, that's sign language. You're in my space. There's a difference between human beings and animals. I'm just trying to make the point here that they think and they feel. They certainly do. Don't you love it when your dog smiles or when your cat purrs? Dogs do smile. Usually their tongue's out, and they always pant. It's a weird thing. My dog's breathing changes when he's happy. All my dogs, they go from to this. We're going out. He's putting his boots on. They think and they feel. It's a pleasure to make them happy. And, cats purring. That's pretty cool. I told you about Fred. Can I tell you a Fred story real quick? I got a couple minutes. Fred, a few winters ago, I arrived at my house in the dark, after work hours, and it's dark. And I'm hearing Fred calling me. He does this. He's kind of a strange cat. He's like, meow. I'm like, what? Fred. I say his name, and I hear him go, meow. I can hear him running and going, meow, with every step. And he gets to where I am, so I reach down and I'm petting Fred. And I'm petting him on the head, and he starts purring. I mean, he's got an engine going. He's all happy. You're a good cat, Fred. I flick the light on. No! To my horror, Fred's throat is wide open. All just muscle tissue and blood vessels. He's been in a fight with something that meant to kill him, but failed. And he's purring. That is a flesh wound. I'm just glad to see you. I'm just so glad you're back, Ken. I'm glad to see you. Don't worry about this. Anyway, just pat me on the head again. Unbelievable. He's a bad putty tat. He's like the most lethal pound for pound killer I know. He thinks and he feels, and he'd been feeling a lot. We got that dog Rex, that black shepherd, and he was mad all summer, just mad. And he let me know every night when I pull in the yard. I'm hearing him, this time he's not running. He's like, how? He's just going, why'd you get that dog? We had a good thing going. All the way up until cold weather, but he wouldn't come back in the house until it got really cold. And I guess I got to get over it. Fred was like, anyway. The stories have a purpose. I'm just trying to make a point that we have friendship with these creatures, and they do think and they do feel. They're just not real deep. And you will never catch Fred, ever, outside watching the sunrise. Not even with his claws retracted. Praising God, from whom all blessings flow. Fred doesn't even pray before he eats, before he bites the head off a mouse. You watch them do that? Cats, have you watched them? They start on that head end, back teeth, until the tail's the last thing that goes down. Yeah, no, really, it's cool. You'll never see the cat finish its torture, which is kind of wicked, right? Which is what they would do to you if they were big enough. So, you never finish the torture and go, God, I thank you for this meal which you have prepared. I know these are absurd suggestions, right? But on this subject, Solomon, it's like they all have the same breath. Let me read again, verse 19. For what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beast is the same. From the earthly perspective, yeah, from the earth, under the sun. They both die, they both return to dirt. He says, as one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beast for all his vanity. We have no advantage right now. That's a reality right now. We can't be immortal right now. We will die and we will rot. You know that? We're all going to die, we're all going to rot. Yep, rot. That reminds me of a Benjamin Franklin quote. The quotable Benjamin Franklin said, if you don't want to be forgotten when you're dead and rotten, do something worth writing, or write something worth reading. I think it's smart. That's a profound quote. Verse 20, he says, all go to one place. All are from the dust, and to dust all return. Yes, physically that is true. We have that in common with the animals. We're made of dirt, and we're going to go right back to dirt. Ben, would you come on back up here while I finish these last couple verses? Verse 21, who knows whether the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes down into the earth? He's not talking about going to hell. When he talks about going down, he's just talking about the pull of gravity. Dead things fall, and dead things decay. In verse 22, so I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own work, for that is his lot. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? Again, there, from an earthly perspective, death is inevitable. From an earthly perspective, we are as mortal as the dog. We're as mortal as the cow. We are as mortal as the swine. But the reality is, eternity is written on our hearts. Eternity is not written on the animal heart, but on ours. So Solomon will continue to go on and on with his attempt at imagining that there is nothing above the sun, it's just life on earth. But he'll continue to sort of digress into references to God, and that God's behind the scenes of all of this.
Hey, thanks for listening. We pray that the Word of God will speak to your heart as you meditate on it. If we can help you grow, or if you have any questions, you can visit us at our website at ccbangor.org. Give us a phone call at area code 207-991-9555, or you can shoot us an email at office@ccbangor.org. I'm Jessica Graves Fleming, and on behalf of my dad and Calvary Chapel Central Maine, we wish you grace and peace.